Worship. What is worship? How do we worship? What good is worship? You know, hopefully that is some of the questions that will be answered this morning in our lesson today. I think Brother Bayless had a message on worship here not too long ago. A whole series of messages on worship here not too long ago. And, you know, there was a lot of territory to cover in worship. And I know in an hour or 45 minutes, we're not going to get over everything that really needs to be gotten over. But, you know, we're going to try and hit some high points here and help us to understand what worship really is. Let's look at our memory verse there. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. This is probably David writing the Psalms here. And you know, he's telling the Lord that I want to direct my attention on you in the morning. He's saying in the morning there. Why in the morning? Why not in the evening? Well, there's nothing necessarily wrong with worshiping God in the evening. In the morning is a good time. I'm not saying that's the cardinal rule or anything, worshiping God in the morning. But you know, in the morning is a good time to go to the Lord in prayer. You have just got up from probably sleeping. You know, most of us. Now, I guess if you work overnight, why, okay, it might be a little bit different, you know, but this is what always works for me. Get up in the morning, thank the Lord for the good night's rest you got. Sure. And then go into your devotion. If you feel like that's the time, go into your devotion and your prayer with God so that He can direct you in the day that's coming up. You know, when we get up in the morning, you know, yeah, we might have an idea of what the weather's like in the morning. But you know, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, I'll go over to the window and look and see what the weather's like, you know. Well, I have a pretty good idea what it's going to be. And, you know, a lot of times I'll listen to the weather and I'll kind of know what the temperature is going to be, you know. And of course, that's another thing. I have a thermometer sitting out there on my front porch there, and I always like to look at it and see what it says, what it's telling me, you know, so I can get prepared for that day, you know, because it makes a difference. That thermometer lets me know how to dress in the morning, you know. You know, if I go out there in a short sleeve shirt and the thermometer says it's 15 degrees, that don't work very well. Or if I go out there with a great big old heavy coat on and it's already 75 degrees out, that don't work very good either. But you know, as God leads us and as we commune with God in the morning, God will lead us. No, He won't tell you this is going to happen at 9 o'clock, this is going to happen at noon, this is going to happen at 3 o'clock, this is going to happen at such and such. He usually don't relay that to me. But you know, if we just put our trust in God and get our advice from Him in the morning, say, Lord, here's my life today. You use my life in the way that is beneficial to you. And help me to be able to follow. Help me to be able to submit myself in a way today that is pleasing in your sight. And you know, the day goes a whole lot better. It goes a whole lot better. And I think this is kind of what David was writing here when he wrote that verse there. Worship every day. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord, is what he says. Does He hear your voice in the morning? He listens for it. Sure. You know, but you know, if we don't voice our voice or express ourselves to Him, He won't hear us. Because we didn't say nothing. That's right. And you know, God's not going to force us to submit ourselves to Him. He's not that kind of a God. But He wants us to submit ourselves to Him. And so, that's a good question. Does He hear your voice in the morning? He's always listening for it. That's what the commentator says. He always listens for it. There's not a time that God does not listen to your voice. We have examples in the Bible where I think it was Daniel one time prayed to God. And for 3 weeks, it took 3 weeks before that prayer was answered. And Daniel made a statement, Lord, why did it take so long? What God tell him? He said, I heard you from the beginning, but it took time for things to take place. And sometimes we might ask God for something, or petition God for something, and we might wait, and then pretty soon we get kind of anxious and kind of tiz whiz kind of, you know what I mean? And we'll quit asking, when God's really working on it there, and we quit right before the answer sometimes. But we need to be persistent with God. We need to, and not boss Him around. That ain't what I'm talking about. But be there and commune with Him each and every day, because that's what builds a relationship. It's the same as a relationship with a husband and wife. If you don't commune every day, there gets to be kind of a pulling apart, There gets to be a division between you two, between the spouses. It just don't work good. And my wife, I can say something and she can practically, we've been married 40 years, she can practically finish the sentence, what I'm getting ready to say or what I've started to say, and that's the way a good relationship works. God is the same way. He already knows what we need, but we can be in a relationship with God and in worship with God in a way that we expect the answer when we ask for it. And it's very important. Why is it good to pray in the morning? We can, and as I've already said, we can ask Him how to plan our day. Just about everybody plans their day. I don't care if you're a teacher. We have teachers in the congregation. You plan a day, what you kind of want to happen. Me being a cook, I have a plan that's set before me that, hey, you got to make sandwiches, you got to make salads, and that's my job. And so I kind of plan that, and work in that direction. If I make salads on a day that I'm supposed to make something else, then it's missing the plan. You're missing the plan. And God's the same way. God has a plan for us. We might plan something in our day, and then God decides that a diversion needs to take place. And when we know that God's dealing with us in this respect, we need to take that diversion that God has. But it's good. And then, of course, if we don't, the question is, why is it good to pray in the morning? If we don't have a communication with the Lord in the morning, then, we could get distracted or led away or deceived or something in that respect. And so that's the reason why we need to have a relationship with God each and every day. We can ask Him how to plan our day. He helps us to think of God more all day when we have a relationship with Him, read our Bible and have prayer and all. It helps us to think of God more every day, all day long, that whole day. As you read the Bible, I read it yesterday morning, I read the Bible, but that took care of yesterday, Today is a new day. Yes, you may go back and pick up some things back the day before or a week before and apply it to your life today. You know, it might just work out to, what I read way back there about a month ago works today. And yes, that'll work. But you know, we just don't quit reading our Bible, but we continue to read and continue. You know, after the wives feed their husband one day, she don't just quit, you know, because the husbands are going to get kind of grouchy if they do, you know. But you know, it's a daily routine that we need to get into. We should read some from the Bible too, which is his thoughts there. Thoughts of its word can be in our mind all day. This will help us to say no when temptation comes. Make a habit of spatial worship time every day. And that, I got that underlined there. Make a habit of a spatial worship time every day. Not just on Sunday. You know, we have a set time that we come and worship God. But you know, that don't mean as soon as service is over, we don't worship anymore. We continue to worship. We come in worship. You know, we come in with worship on our mind. We come in worshiping God. And God likes to hear you at any time. You know, that's one thing about God. He never sleeps. You know, you can call on Him at midnight and He'll answer you. You can call on Him early hours in the morning and He'll hear you. Now, I like to go to bed a little earlier than most people do, but you know, I could call on Him at 10 o'clock at night, which is late for me, 11 o'clock at night, midnight, you know, which is really late. And a lot of times if I get a telephone call at that time, I don't even hear the telephone ring, you know. But God always hears His telephone ringing. We don't have to worry about that. Make a habit of spatial worship time every day. God likes to hear you at any time. Pray many times. It is not the position of our body that matters when we pray, but rather the condition of our heart. Amen. And you know, sometimes Christian people get in a groove, well, I've got to bow my head when I pray. I've got to kneel when I pray. Or I've got to, whatever, when I pray. But that's not necessarily. Just make sure that your heart's kneeling or your heart is bowing its head in reverence to God. That's the main thing. I've heard Brother Bayless say many a time when he was working in Wichita Falls, he would pray on the way to Wichita Falls. Now, you know good and well he didn't have his head bowed and he wasn't in a kneeling position, or he wouldn't have made it down there, I don't think, every time. But you know, that's his condition of his heart was what mattered most. And that's it. You know, we can be standing up, or we can be looking up, or we can be looking straight ahead and still be in a manner of prayer. All included in the worship of our dear Lord and Savior. We have some vocabulary words there. I've got an emphasis here, a junior emphasis I want to read. We must worship God only. And I can't express that enough. We must worship God only. And God is not Muhammad. God is not Allah. God is not Buddha. A lot of these people and so-called Christians, people that consider themselves Christian, will say, oh, the Muslim serves Allah, which is, or I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Allah or whatever. That's their God. That's their God. Yes, it is their God, but it's the wrong God. And I'll be the first to say, it's the wrong God. There's only one God. We must worship God only. We must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Outward form is not worship. And that's another thing that we have to be careful with. You know, we can show up, put on a real outward appearance before people. And oh my, he's really worshiping God, you know. But we don't see the heart. God's the one that sees the heart. Right. God knows whether that worship is really real or just fake. So we have to be very careful in that. We don't want to worship God to be seen by others as being our only objective in that. Yes, we're going to worship God and other people are going to see it. Now that's different. That's altogether different than what I'm talking about. We don't worship just to be seen, but we worship God because of what our heart intent is the reason why we worship. Worship is the obedient answer of our spirit to His Spirit. Did you catch that? Worship is the obedient answer of our spirit to His Spirit. You know, when His Spirit deals with our spirit or abodes with our spirit, we will be in the right spirit then. If we're in the wrong spirit, His Spirit won't abode with us. And it won't be worship. Oh yeah, it may be a big old front. And that's all it is a big old front. We should worship, and I like this word, continually. Continually. Whether it's Monday morning or whether it's Friday afternoon or whether it's Sunday morning in church. It doesn't make any difference. You know, a lot of people on Monday morning, you know, I got a whole week ahead of me of work, you know, and they may not be in a real good mood. But then, you know, Friday, and the reason why I said Friday afternoon, you know, that's usually, weekends ahead of us, you know, they're in a more cheerful mood, you know. And then, you know, Sunday morning, everybody's cheerful on Sunday, you know, you're supposed to be cheerful on Sunday. But no, it doesn't make any difference. Monday morning should be just as cheerful as Sunday in church, you know. It should be just the same. It shouldn't be any different. Let's get into our study on worship here. God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Who said that? Who said that? Jesus did, didn't He? Who did He say that to? I think it was the woman at the well, if my memory serves me right correctly. Because she had asked the question, Lord, if you're Lord then, if you're the one that the Jews is looking for, which she was a Jew, I think, partly, wasn't she a part Jew? Half Jew, okay. But she knew that the Jews was looking for Him. And she says, okay, if you're the one, then where should we worship? You know, our people says we need to worship here. Your people says we need to worship here. Yeah. You know, that was the big question. And you know, that's a legitimate question to ask, you know. Where should we worship? And Jesus said, God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. It doesn't make any difference whether it's on this mountain or on this mountain or on this valley or out in the sea somewhere. It doesn't make any difference. It all depends upon your heart's condition. Where's your heart? Where's the condition of your heart? Worship must be real. Jesus said, God is a spirit. You know, spirits, the Spirit of God knows everything, and I mean 100% of everything about your spirit. We are spirit too. Let me just insert that. We're spirit too. And that's how we worship God, is in spirit and in truth. But God knows everything about our spirit. God, there's not one thing. You might think you have something hid from God, but there's not one thing that God don't already know. Right. Worship must be real. I like that. Worship must be real. You can't fake it. You can't pretend it. You can't slough it over, veneer it over, or nothing. It must be real. If any of that I have mentioned is involved in your worship, it's not true worship. It's not worship. I'm going to just say it's not worship. It's just simple as that. Jesus said God is a spirit. We are spirits too. You are a spirit. You live inside your body. Our spirit, let me back up. You live inside your body. The real you live inside your body. You know, you think you live inside your body, and you know, you tell some person out in the world that, you know, well, yeah, you know, Sister Paula don't live in my body, or, you know, I don't live in, Brother Bayless don't live in I live in my body. Yes, that's right. But the soul and the spirit of you is what lives in this earthly vessel. And you know, it's the soul and it's the spirit is what worships the Lord. Yes, we use our body to worship God. And you know, we don't want to use our body in any way that would offend the worship of God either. That's our body and our spirit is in cahoots with one another. You know, what our spirit thinks inside our body, that's what our body will do then. For sure. And so we have to realize that. You live inside your body. Our spirit is the part of us that feels and cares and loves and worships. The union of His Spirit with our spirit is salvation. That's what prepares us to be able to worship God. That's right. You know, if we're not saved, there's no way we can worship God. I'm sorry, but there's no way. I mean, that's just the way it is. There's no way that you can worship God if you're not a Christian. If you're not a Christian. We have to be in tune with God before we can worship Him. Jesus said, they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. How can we be in spirit and in truth if we're not a Christian? If we haven't surrendered our heart and life over to God? There's too many obstructions that are going to come, and we are going to be so resistant that we cannot worship God in that respect. There's no way we can do it. Oh, I'm real easy to get along with. How many people have said, I'm real easy to get along with? You know, almost everybody says that, don't they? And you know, there's some people that, oh my goodness, they are so hard to get along with. But they will also say the same thing. Oh, I'm very easy to get along with. Oh my. You know, well, we're the same way. Unsaved people says, oh, I can get along with Jesus. No, you can't. Because otherwise you'd be following Him if you did. And so, you know, we have to get ourselves prepared before we can worship Jesus. And we can't do it. We cannot do it. You think, boy, you're contradicting yourself. We have to let God get our life prepared. That's right. All we have to do is surrender ourselves to God, and He gets our life prepared, and that's when we start taking off. It's just like a newborn baby, you know. Baby's there, you know. It's in conception. It comes together, and it grows, and that is then after it's born, it starts taking in milk. You know, you don't feed it meat right away, you know, and that's the same way a newborn Christian is. You don't feed it meat right away because it'll strangle on that stuff, you know. But, you know, well, meat's good. I love meat. Yeah, but you're an older person, you know. You can handle it. Yeah, no teeth. No teeth. The baby, you know, you got teeth. Okay. So, you know, God prepares each one of us as we grow. They who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth. We must worship God with our heart. We must mean it also. God knows our heart. We cannot deceive Him. Deception and God, there's not such a thing. You can't deceive God. Outward things are not worship. Kneeling is not worship. It's not necessarily worship. Just because you kneel when you pray don't mean that you're necessarily worshiping.
That's right.
You know, that's a quiet place is not always worship. Beauty is not worship. We may have some of these with our worship, however, they are not worship any more than a pie plate is a pie. You know, if I go home today, well, the wife don't have a pie fixed, but if she had a pie fixed, you know, I wouldn't want to take the pie out and lay it aside and eat the pie plate. And you know, that's what a lot of people are trying to do. You know, by putting on a front. That's what they're doing. They're laying the pie aside and eating the pie plate, you know. Can you imagine eating a glass pie plate or a tin, you know, a tin pie plate, you know? I want the pie, you know. That's what I want. And that's the reason why people think they are so smart, you know, out there. Well, I'm serving God. But what are they doing? Eating the pie plate, you know. That's, you know, and another thing that came to my mind when I was studying this, you know, if you're out in the desert and you come on this old pool of water that's stagnant, you know, that maybe has wiggle tails. You don't know what wiggle tails are. They're well, maybe I'm calling them wrong, but the larva of a mosquito, you know, swimming around in there, you know. Oh yeah, you might survive on that water, but what if you go down another half mile and there's a nice cool oasis, you know, there. Clear water, nice water, you know. Too many people are drinking this old stagnant water and calling it worship, you know. And when they could just go a little bit further and enjoy the good things of God. And you know, that come to my mind, and I thought, you know, that's a good illustration. You know, some people just are satisfied with the old stagnant, the old pie pan. You know, they're satisfied with that. Worship is inside of us. It is the love, thanks, and praise we feel in our heart and give to God. That's right. You know, we can feel it in our heart, but if we don't express it to God, what good's that? Oh yeah, God knows. You know, you might have an argument saying, well, God knows. But yeah, He likes to be told that, you know. You know, if your wife fixes you a good, nice meal, you know, you don't just automatically think that she knows I like that and go on about the business, you know. But it's nice, and they love it when you say, oh, honey, that was a wonderful meal. I really enjoyed that, you know. They enjoyed that. No, it's not an ego thing. It's a thing that we, as men, I'm going to say, need to tell them, sure, you know, because they appreciate things that we do to them, you know. But, you know, that's something, and that's the way God is. God needs to be told, you know, even though He already knows it, but He needs to be told that. Give God praise, love, thanks. You know, if we never show love, thanks, and praise to God, our relationship with Him is going to dwindle. It's not going to work. Worship is giving of ourselves unto God to obey Him. That's part of it too. That's right. And obey Him, I underline that. That is very necessary. That is part of worship. Worship is the going out of our heart toward God. What is coming out of our heart toward God, that's the worship. You know, worship is our spirit reaching to God's spirit. And you know, we don't have to reach very far. God comes way over halfway. God comes, we don't even have to go halfway. We can't even reach halfway maybe, but God reaches in and takes care. And you know what? He don't just reach in and touch, but He comes and abides with us. That's what worship really is. Then Jesus said, let's go to that Matthew 4 and 10. Then Jesus said unto them, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. I like to focus on that last part. Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Worship. The devil came to Jesus and said, if you'll bow down and worship me, I'll give you all this, whatever it was, kingdoms or whatever it was that he had offered. But you know, Jesus came back with him and said, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Him only. What is the first commandment? Thou shalt have no other gods before me, right? Isn't that the first commandment? What's the second commandment? Thou shalt not make unto me any graven images. What's the third? Thou shalt not take the Lord thy God in vain. Okay, that's kind of a high points of the first three commandments. You know, it all dealt with God. God is interested in us serving him and him only. You might think, boy, he has a big ego. Okay, no, it's not that. It's he gave us the opportunity to do whatever we want to. Or otherwise we'd be angels. You know, the angels don't have a choice whether to worship him or not. They worship him because that's the way they were created. Sure. We, as people, have an opportunity to go one way or the other. Mm-hmm. You know, as we go in our life and we meet the time of year, time when we get a certain age, what do you call that? Age of accountability. We come to a crossroads. And I know that in baseball, there's a funny saying, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. You know, you've heard that, you know. But, you know, we have a fork in the road there. And it makes a difference which side we take. You know, I would say most of us, I'm going to say myself, took the wrong road, took the wrong fork, you know. But you know, God dealt with me on that. Later on, he dealt with me. And finally I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong way. And you know, God had mercy on me and prepared my life. That's when I realized, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. I thought I knew what Mom and Dad was talking about when they told me that. Well, you know, yeah, I'm serving God, but going my own way. You know, now how can a person get so messed up in thinking that you're worshiping God but going your own way? But you know, there's so many people that way. You know, there is so many people that way. And you know, when you realize that, okay, worship, okay, I'm on the right way now, God, and I'm following God. I'm doing what he says I'm supposed to be doing. Then that is when you really realize what real worship is. People might, and I've already mentioned it, people might think that Buddha is their God. They might think that Muhammad is their God. They might think that Allah is their God, and I've mentioned several of them. And you can have anything. Baal, back in the Old Testament. You can set anything ahead of God and think that you're on the right way. And you know, and there's a lot of people, so-called people that says that they're Christian, which when you listen to them, you know that there's something wrong there. Well, they serve that God, and I can still serve my God. We're serving the same God. It's not right. That is not right. They're either serving God or they're not serving God. And serving Buddha, serving Muhammad, and serving them is not God. It's not God. God was the creator of this world. They were not the creator of the world. God was the creator of the world. He didn't need Buddha to help him create the world. So therefore, he's the one that we serve. I'd like for you to, I'm going to read this verse here. It's not in there. Psalms 29:2. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. You know, I said earlier that beauty is not always worship. But you know, when worship with beautiness, that's worship then. That is worship then. Beauty of holiness. What is beauty of holiness? Being holy before the Lord. That's what God sees as beauty there. Because you're following him. You're doing what he wants you to do. No other one or no other thing must receive our worship. No saint. You know, a lot of people consider Mary as a saint. And yes, she was a saint. I'll agree with her. She was a saint. But she's not to be worshipped. Gabriel, the angel, he's pretty important. But he's not to be worshipped. Gabriel don't want to be worshipped. He wants you to worship God. Or person, image, idol, or possession. Either one. None of them is to be worshipped. When the devil tempted Jesus, he asked Jesus to fall down and worship him. Jesus would not, because it would have been sin. And then Jesus told him, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. We must not worship, and like I said, an idol. We must not pray to Mary. Don't even pray to Mary, because that's part of worship. You know, you hear this throwing a football, it's the last few seconds and they're throwing the football 50, 60, 70 yards, and they call that a Hail Mary. I hate that. I hate that expression, because it's like praying to Mary, you know. Mary's dead. She can't help us, you know. God's the one that can help, you know. Saints, angels, images, or pictures. You know, we have a picture over here on the wall, and I like that picture. You know, that's Jesus, and I'm one of these little sheep running around here, you know. That's the way I feel. I'm being led of God. I'm being led of Jesus. Jesus has taken me to the pasture, you know, to feed, you know. But I don't worship that picture. I don't even worship the picture of Jesus, you know. But I worship Jesus. There's a difference between worship. When you got married, you didn't want to marry a picture of your husband or your wife, did you? You wanted the real thing, didn't you? Yeah, that's it, you know. So, you know, we don't worship images. We don't worship. We must not bow down in worship of anything but God. God is the only God. You know, there's a song, I'm a child of the King, or I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. I'm not the child of a God. You know, there's just a few little words moved around, but it has altogether different sound, don't it? I'm a child. There's more than one child of God, but there's only one God. I'm just a part of the children of God, you know, but one God. Let's go to Matthew 6:6. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. Is this literal? Going into a literal closet? It could be, but I don't think it's necessarily that way. Block everything out of your mind that's cluttering your mind. That's what he's talking about more than anything. Block everything that's cluttering your mind and focus on God. God is the one that we answer to. He's the boss that we answer to. Can I put it that way? But yet he's not a boss, you know, but he's the one we answer. He's the supervisor we answer to. And if we don't answer to him, then we're answering to the wrong one. Pray for God to hear. Jesus said some people like to pray for people to see them. You know, do you want God to hear you or do you want people to see you? Boy, there's a big difference there. If you want God to hear you and really, really are sincere for God to hear you, that's sincere prayer. But if you want to have people to hear how flowing your prayer is to God, then God will not hear not one word of it. But yet you'll be judged by that too. God said some people like to pray for people to see. This is pride. Boy, this is pride deluxe, isn't it? It is selfishness. It is not true prayer. It's not prayer at all. Let me put that. Let me insert that. It's not prayer at all. It's just a bunch of mumble jumble is what it is. Jesus said to shut the door to other things. Do not let distracting thoughts hinder your prayer. And you know, prayer is worship. Prayer is part of worship.
Yes, it is.
Praising God is part of worship. Listening to messages is part of worship. Singing is part of worship. There's a lot of things that are part of worship. But yet it's got to be originated from God, Spirit, so that it can interact with our spirit. And our spirit has to be in tune with God's Spirit in order for it to be worship.
Absolutely.
Pray to thy Father which is in secret. Think only of your talk with God. He hears, He knows, He will answer. Do not, now here's, okay, that's what you should do. Here's what you should not do. Do not pray to please people, but to please God. Don't pray to please people. Oh, let me see. I got to remember all the requests that was mentioned, you know, and everything. Yes, you need to remember. You need to have a burden of your heart. But you know, we're going to miss some request. There's going to be some requests that's going to probably be made today, and whoever prays is going to miss that. But you know, when our heart is in tune with God, God takes that into consideration.
Amen.
God takes that into consideration when our worship is in spirit and in truth. Yes, I may not be able to remember everything, but God does.
Yes, He does.
He is so much greater than I am. He's so much greater than any of us are, because He can remember. Do not pray for people to hear, but for God to hear. Pride and worship never go together. They're just as two opposite as opposite can be, pride and worship. True worship puts ourselves low and God high and lifted up. You know, there's too many people that wants to be the one lifted up and drag God down to their level. There's too many people that wants to do that. And you know, we can't drag God down. We may, if we're not living for Him and not living in tune with Him, we might want to try to drag Him down, but we cannot drag God down. God's up here, and you can do all the pulling and tugging and everything that you can. You're not going to drag God down. He's going to still be up there. The only thing you're doing is dragging yourself further and getting deeper in the hole. It is all right to pray in meeting with other people, and that's expected. The apostles did. Didn't the apostles pray in congregation, you know, in a congregation together with other people listening? They wasn't in a closet all the time with the door shut praying, but they were in a closet with their minds uncluttered. That's what he's talking about. However, the prayer is offered to God alone. You know, other people hear what we're saying to God, but it's between you and God is what the prayer is. Prayer is between you and God. And yes, I may be praying, you may be hearing what I'm saying, and you may be in agreement, and probably are in agreement. But it takes the prayer of uncluttered minds to reach God. If we have clutter in our minds, our prayer won't get above the ceiling here. How do we worship in church services? How do we worship in church services? When we sing, think of the words. You know, that one song that we sang for Christmas was a good song that we had for the Advent. I don't know if I've ever heard that song before, but I got to listening to the words and I thought, that brother, Charles, what was his name? Had several brothers over in England. Wesley, I think, was the one that wrote that song, you know. And I thought, you know, that he knew what he was talking about. You know, that guy was in worship with God. And it helps me to be able to worship God when I heard that. That's just, I agree with you, Brother Wesley. I agree with you on that because of what was being said. Because of what was being said. When we sing, think of the words. And here's another thing, mean them. Mean the words that's being said, you know. Don't just look over them. Oh yeah, that's nice. Oh yeah, it rhymes together good and all that. But mean them, you know. Let your love go up to God. Just don't be ashamed to love God. Don't, you know, you're not ashamed to love your wife, you know. Maybe give her a kiss on the cheek or something out in public. You're not ashamed to do that, you know. Don't be ashamed to give God the love. Let your love go up to God. Thank and praise Him. This is worship. When others pray, join in the prayer in your thoughts. You know, I've heard several people pray at one time, you know, and sometimes it can be kind of a distraction because you can't hear. You're hearing this one and this one and this one, and they may be praying for three different things, you know. You know, and sometimes it's kind of a distraction. But you know, when one person's a praying, you know, you can be in agreement with that person, and that is what God expects from us, to be in agreement with that person. They're not, hopefully, they're not praying to be heard of you. If it's real, if it's in spirit and in truth, it won't be. And you can agree with that prayer. And you know, sometimes even if it is a show, you can be in agreement with them, and the prayer will be answered because of maybe your attitude toward God. And so, you know, just make sure that we're right. Just make sure that our heart, me, I'm going to say, make sure that my heart is right. So that when worship comes from my mouth, it's worship to God. Talk with God. Okay, when others pray, join in the prayer in your thoughts. Talk with God. Thank Him. Listen to the sermon is another way. Thank God for what you learn. In addition, thank Him for His goodness and His promises. Open your heart to Him to work in you. Open your heart to Him to work in you. This is what real true worship is opening our heart. And there's a song there, and I love this song here that's written there. You might see it there. Alone with God, the world forbidden. Get all that worldly stuff out of your mind. You know, we're cluttered with worldly stuff every day. Every day. We work around it. We live in it. We're not taking it in as part of us, but we have to be around it. Alone with God, the world forbidden. Alone with God, oh blessed retreat. Can you think of a better retreat than to be alone with God? There's a lot of people out there that I wouldn't want to be alone with. But God's not one of them. There's times that I want to be alone with God. There's other times that I like when God's in the presence of all of us. Just like today. It's good that the presence of the Lord is here. Because we can enjoy God, first of all, and we can enjoy each other because of it. Alone with God and in Him hidden. If we're hidden in God, we have no problems whatsoever. We have no worries. We have no anxious times. We have no troubling times because we're alone with God. Alone with God and in Him hidden, to hold with Him communion sweet. If we commune with God, it's the sweetest thing that can ever happen to us. Because we're alone with Him. All else is pushed aside, is out of our mind. Alone with God, oh blessed retreat. Being with Him is what is so important. I know we didn't get through this lesson here, but time has come we'll have to go into the next one. But one thing I want you to really grasp a hold of, true worship comes in spirit and in truth. Amen. And true worship, when you experience true worship, you're drinking of the oasis and not the stagnant water. You're eating the pie and not the pie pan. So, if you're not experiencing the pie, then you haven't got the whole worship. You haven't got that worship thing down yet. And so, God wants us to worship Him in spirit and in truth. And our next lesson will be on pure mindlessness. So we have to have a pure mind before we can worship Him. All right.